If you want to be more consistent, you're in the right place. I'm Elizabeth Benton. Welcome to Consistent, a podcast by Primal Potential that is for all of you who feel frustrated by your lack of progress or overwhelmed by all the change that you want to make in your life. Here, we stop frantically chasing new habits and start strategically building a structure of consistency. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Primal Potential Podcast. I am Elizabeth Benton. In our last episode, I think it was our last episode, 1402, we were talking about how a lot of people are trying to solve a what to eat problem when they really need to solve a why you eat problem. And one of the things that I got a ton of feedback on from episode 1402 was the idea that if you imagine your options for stress, overwhelm, anger, boredom, loneliness, exhaustion, celebration, all of it, if you imagine your options for those moments as like buttons on a dashboard, a lot of people only have one or two buttons. Like food, maybe food and alcohol, maybe food and scrolling, maybe food and vaping, but a very limited dashboard. And so many people reached out and were like, that is me, but I don't know what to do. Think about it. If food is your only button, as it was for me for a long time, or your primary button or your easiest button, no wonder you keep using it, right? If every time you're stressed, overwhelmed, tired, lonely, frustrated, your most accessible button, if you will, is food, then yeah, you keep pressing it. So we need to fix it. And that's what we're going to do today. This isn't just like awareness, oh, that's so me, but now what? How do you actually build a bigger metaphorical dashboard? How do you create more real options so that food isn't the go-to solution in disguise for all the heavy lifts in your life? And this matters a lot more than most people think, because for many, food is doing way more jobs than food was ever meant to do, than food ought to do, right? For so many people, and I include myself in this because this was me up until my 30s at some point, food wasn't just food. Food was also functioning as stress relief. Food was functioning as comfort. Food was functioning as reward, as stimulation when I was bored, as a break if I was overwhelmed at work or stuck on something. Food was celebration. Food was relief from anxiety. Food was how I would stay awake when I was tired. Food was my go-to when I was frustrated. I mean, you name it. And when food is doing all of that, You can't effectively just say, well, I need to stop eating. That's just too shallow. If food is your primary tool or your only tool for 6 or 12 different jobs, then taking it away without building something else is going to feel awful. It's like taking somebody's crutch and being surprised when they fall over. So we started in 1402 with the awareness, like, oh yeah, it does sound like me. I can see why that's such a problem. And the next step is building. And I know that's where a lot of people get stuck because I got those emails, I got those messages, I got those comments on social media last week. People were like, yeah, that's so me, but I don't know what else to do. I want you to first think about, okay, here's what we're talking about. I want to give you a visual. And if you think it's weird to imagine things, then be weird, because we need better imaginations in order to be better problem solvers. So consider this an activity in becoming more creative so you can be a better problem solver. So imagine that in your brain is this dashboard, almost like a keyboard, but it doesn't have letters on it. It just has buttons, right? And these are the options you can press when you are sad, happy, celebrating, tired, frustrated, lonely. We need to build a bigger dashboard so that we're not just always returning to food. Anybody have a keyboard where like the T or the S or the R letter is like worn off because you press that letter so often, or more so than like Z looks like a brand new key, but T, you can hardly see the letter anymore. I know a lot of my computers look like that. Well, imagine our food button on that dashboard of responses that we have is often just worn out. So we need other options, but I want you to think about these buttons serving actually two different purposes. This is not something I talked about in 1402, but after having conversations with you guys over the last few days, I want to make sure that we explore this. Some buttons help you recover, right? And that's what we're talking about. Somebody had shared with me, and I shared this in episode 1402, that food was just after a really stressful day of work. That's how they knew to get back to baseline more quickly, to kind of soothe that overstimulated, stressed out response. So some buttons help you recover or return to baseline. And other buttons help you so that you're less likely to need recovery in the first place or less likely to need it as often. So that's very different, right? Some buttons help you recover when you're super overwhelmed, and others make you less likely to be that overwhelmed or be that overwhelmed as often. That's a critical distinction. We need to think about, what do I do when I'm stressed? What do I do when I'm overwhelmed? What do I do when I'm tired or frustrated or anxious or lonely? But we also need to think about, what's contributing to me feeling that way repeatedly? What am I doing that is bringing me to this place of feeling maxed out with stress or maxed out with frustration? The goal is not just what do I do when I'm stressed. It's how do I create resilience so it takes more to bring me to the point where I feel like I need an emergency escape hatch. The way that I was thinking about this in my own life, I think about how working out makes me feel satisfied, but I'm never like, ooh, I'm really craving some satisfaction. Workout button. It's not that. In the same way that making my bed gives me a sense of satisfaction. But again, I'm never in a moment where I'm like, oh yes, I need more satisfaction. Here's what those things do for me. In my life, working out, making my bed, staying on top of the laundry, loading the dishwasher, those things create a sense of satisfaction and order and self-respect that make me more resilient. So, not that you need to model the way that I start my day, but for the sake of example, when I work out first thing in the morning and then I come home and I empty the dishwasher and I put away laundry and I make my bed, I've now pressed that satisfaction button. And the purpose of that is I'm now more resilient, meaning the difference between a day when I've worked out in the morning and made my bed and put away the laundry and a day when I wake up late and I'm rushing around and I just, pull my hair back and throw some sweats on and race out to whatever I need to do, I am way more likely to get frustrated and stressed out on a day where I haven't strategically pressed those different satisfaction buttons, right? So they're serving a different purpose than, say, the way that I respond when I'm stressed or I'm anxious or I'm celebrating or I'm lonely, but they function in a similar way because they're making me more resilient to the life forces that lead me to feel like I need some kind of escape. When I start my day with movement, when I do a few things early that make me feel capable and grounded and proud of myself, I'm not starting the day hanging on by a thread. Anybody else feel like you start some days hanging on by a thread? I want to start my days intentionally so that it takes more to knock me down. Now, not every day allows for that. There are some days where I wake up to the sound of a kid crying or throwing up, and I'm starting that day hanging on by a thread because I didn't get enough sleep and I was changing sheets at 2 a.m, but that's the exception. And the rule in this season of my life is that I wake up and I go to the gym and I come home and I empty the dishwasher. And that sounds like such a silly one, but what that means is after the kids and me and Chris have breakfast, everything can go right into the dishwasher and we don't start the day with a sink full of dishes, right? I get agitated by a sink full of dishes. I just do. Judge me. I just do. So it makes me more resilient. It helps me recover. What changes do I need to make in my life so that recovery feels less urgent and necessary all the time? What changes do you need to make so that recovery feels like a less urgent necessity so routinely? Some buttons help you recover. Some buttons make it less likely that you'll need recovery in the first place. And you want both. Okay? You want both. So what I was suggesting in episode 1402 is that some people on their dashboard, all they do is hit the food button because it's accessible, it's practiced, it's affordable, right? It's not illegal. And so when they're angry, they're eating. When they're overwhelmed, they're eating. When they're bored, they're eating. We need to build out a bigger dashboard, and you don't need a million buttons, right? Starting with 2 is better than just having the 1. But we want to think about, hey, what options do I want to give myself as a response when I'm stressed? So I'm not just eating every time I'm stressed. What options do I want to give myself when I'm anxious so that I'm not just eating every time I'm anxious? What options do I want to give myself when I'm overwhelmed so I'm not just eating every time I'm overwhelmed? Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, I don't know. I don't know. And we're going to talk about that. Trust me, you're not off the hook. Don't let yourself off the hook with I don't know. I'm coming for you and your I don't know in just a few minutes. Before we do that, I don't just want you to identify your most common challenges or emotions that lead you to reach for whatever it is, that lead you to reach for scrolling, that lead you to reach for alcohol, that lead you to reach for whatever your thing is, right? For some people, it's checking out and watching hours of Netflix. For other people, it's spending money. For other people, it's eating. For other people, it's vaping. For other people, it's drinking. I want you to not just identify the states that often lead you to that thing. I want you to think about what creates that state, right? This is so important. It's not just when am I stressed or what is leading me to this substance or this behavior. It's not just that. It's why am I stressed and what contributes to my stress? It's not just why am I overwhelmed. It's what patterns are contributing to that. I've talked before about like clutter and how that is one of the things that moves me to overwhelm and frustration and sometimes rage faster than just about anything else. That and like technical difficulties, but those are rare compared to stress and messes and clutter. So when I think about like, okay, when I feel overwhelmed and frustrated, what patterns are contributing to that? And I think about when the kids dump out all the Magna-Tiles and then they dump out all the cars and then they dump out all the crayons. And I feel like the walls are closing in. Well, as important as improving my response to this, and we talk about this so much in defense, like in the moment defense versus preemptive defense. If you haven't completed a scholarship application, why not? May 1st is going to be here before you know it. Get those scholarship applications in because we start on May 1st. So I want to give you plenty of time. Anyway, what preemptive responses look like is I've now a few times throughout the day when I notice, okay, they're done with the Magna-Tiles and they've moved on to coloring. Hey, hold on, everybody. 1, 2, 3, we're going to put up the Magna-Tiles. And what I'm doing is I'm strategically approaching those little triggers that once one little thing, one little mess does not upset me. But when it's 4 or 5, and that can happen really, really fast, I feel just like my skin is on fire. I will walk into a room and feel like this is out of control, even if it's only 5 minutes away from being totally picked up. So I am strategic about not just like, well, what causes overwhelm? The mess is from the kids. Well, what are the little things that I can do so that I'm not arriving at that place where I need that emergency escape button? So I'm stopping throughout the day and going, hey, kids, all right. And even if they're not doing it because they've moved on and they're playing outside, I'm going to make an effort to pick up. I was talking to my girlfriends about this the other day, and we were talking about making our bed, because it is so much easier to keep up than it is to catch up. And women are uniquely affected compared to men, obviously that's a generalization, but on the whole, women are impacted much more by their physical environment than men are. It drives a surge in cortisol, one of our stress hormones in women, dramatically more than it does in men. So what are we going to do about that, right? If I know that I'm more likely to get overstimulated and overwhelmed when I let that stuff build and build, then I need to have a strategy for that. And that matters as much as having a better response when I'm at a 10 out of 10 frustration. Same thing if somebody says, well, I'm tired, and so I turn to food, or I check out and I'm scrolling when I'm tired. If you're tired all the time, then yes, we want a better response to your fatigue than eating or scrolling. But also, why are you tired? Are you staying up too late? Are you watching 3 hours of TV every night? Are you sleeping poorly because of your habits? Are you overcommitted? Are you eating in a way that makes your energy worse? Are you not getting enough light or enough movement or enough water? We need to address that. If overwhelm is your big one, okay, what is making you overwhelmed? You know what a lot of people who are overwhelmed will tell me? Everything. Okay, we're going to be specific. Is there a pattern of procrastination? Is there a pattern of overcommitting? Is there a pattern of not having boundaries, saying yes when you mean no, not planning ahead, waiting until everything is urgent? Because addressing that pattern is as important, if not more important, than finding the perfect tool for when you're drowning, you know? And again, this is one of the things that is most powerful in the work we do in Defense Foundations. If you're thinking to yourself, I know overwhelm is a big issue for me, but I don't know how to change the pattern that keeps creating it, that is what Defense Foundations is for. And you've been invited to apply for a scholarship. So if you haven't, it's worth asking yourself why. If you know the pattern is there and you know you need help interrupting it and you know you don't want to keep living this way, don't just sit there with that awareness. One of the things you know you can do is apply for a scholarship. The link is in the show description. Now, I told you guys in episode 1402 that my metaphorical dashboard used to be embarrassingly small. Food was like the main button. I've never really been much of a drinker. I was a weed smoker. So I would say pot was a button and food was a button. And that was a dangerous combination because if you have any familiarity with weed, makes you eat more. At least for me and for many, it made me eat more. But if I was stressed, it was food. If I was overwhelmed, food. Frustrated, food. Boredom, food. Pleasure, food. Celebrating, happy, date night, food. And so telling yourself not to do it is just not a strategic answer. You need to build something better. And I think part of what makes this feel hard for people is that they're not quite sure how. One of the traps that I was waiting to fall into was like waiting for life to happen to me. Like, well, I'm lonely and so I can't do anything about that. I was just like waiting to be included, waiting to be invited, waiting for somebody to like on my door and be like, hey, Elizabeth, you want to be my friend? You want to come hang out with me? No. Or some people are just waiting to be less busy, waiting to know what they like. I just don't know. So I'm just going to sit here and not do anything until an idea pops into my head that inspires me. No. Waiting for somebody else to create connection or novelty or belonging. And I did that too. I felt like I was sitting around waiting to be invited into life, waiting to have some revelation that changed things. And part of building a better dashboard is becoming somebody who creates opportunities, not somebody who waits for opportunities, okay? You don't need to be the cruise director of your life, but you also can't wait and be like, well, I don't know, so I guess I can't do anything. Well, I don't have any ideas, so that's a really good idea, but it's not for me. You need to practice being somebody who creates opportunities. One of the things for me as an introvert that I've started doing in this season of life after years of intentionally making friendships, you can have a lot of friends and still not be included in things because, you know, maybe it's winter and nobody's really got things going on. I create opportunities. So we've started texting a whole bunch of people and being like, hey, casual burger night at our house on Friday, if you can make it. And we might tell that to 12 or 15 people. And then maybe like 3 or 4 families show up. Great. Perfect. As opposed to what can happen is like, well, I reached out to somebody and they're not available, so I tried. No. Create opportunities, right? Be a needle mover in your own life Ask a friend to take a walk. Sign up to take a class that doesn't rely on anybody else, any friend, anybody who wants to do it with you. Just go take a class. Go to a church event. Volunteer. Start the thing and start it poorly, right? Maybe you want to be able to afford piano lessons, but you can't. So get a cheap keyboard and teach yourself with YouTube, right? Be somebody who initiates. Be somebody who takes action. You're not going to build a better dashboard without being somebody who creates opportunities. This isn't going to happen to you. You can't buy a dashboard from somebody else. It's not just going to be divinely inspired and then appear before you. I mean, I guess miracles are possible, but it's highly unlikely that's how it's going to unfold. A lot of people are waiting for life to feel fuller, but they're continuing to live in a way that keeps it small. And that's just not going to work. I'm going to share with you part of what has helped me here, because again, I had just the food and weed buttons, and I'm an introvert, and I didn't really have friends. I moved around a lot, and I think because of my insecurity and my weight, I've shared this before, I just took on the friend group of whoever I was dating or wherever I was working. And so then if I changed relationships or I changed jobs, I kind of felt like I was starting from scratch, and I did a lot of that. And so after my divorce from my first husband and I moved back to New England, I really had a completely blank slate. Now, when I share what I've done, it's not necessarily going to be for you because it depends on your season of life. It depends on your interests, your energy, your personality, your finances, your mobility even. I'm not going to join a knitting club. That's not my lane. But I know a lot of people who get a ton of joy from that. You might not join pickleball if you're dealing with mobility stuff right now, but don't tell yourself, well, because I can't exercise, I can't. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Somebody else might not do church, but they might do a walking club. And it doesn't have to involve other people either. You know, learning an instrument or a new language or volunteering where there's no other humans. You're just going to be brushing cats. I don't know. But here are a few things that have really helped me build out this dashboard. Church community has been huge for a few reasons. Number one, the joy and fulfillment that comes from being in community is tremendous. But also, the faith angle and the developing faith and the growing faith, the ever-growing faith, has made me more resilient so that I'm less likely to get super overwhelmed and super angry or be lost in grief and feeling like I need an escape, because I understand that I'm never alone, that I have the Holy Spirit and that the Holy Spirit lives within me. And that also I know this world will have trouble and that I'm ultimately not here for this, that this is sort of a difficult and arduous part of a journey to someplace much better, right? But being in a church community, I think, has helped my introverted nature. It's helped me step into relationships in a way that was more comfortable for me as an introvert, right? Because I'm not having to be like, so do you want to go to coffee? Because there were things already happening that I could just opt into. And that made it a lot easier for me to build out a network of things that not only bring me joy, that not only hedge against loneliness, that also give me meaning, right? It just functions as a lot of different boxes checked. Part of that is actually going to church service. Part of that is volunteering and feeling like I'm contributing. And that kind of goes back to the function of things like working out and making my bed and starting the day with emptying the dishwasher and putting away laundry. It just builds a buffer. It builds self-worth so that I'm not as prone to seeking escape as often, right? Playing guitar is another one. And there was a season when I was actually going to guitar lessons, and that season was short because it's not, doesn't fit in the way that I would want it to fit into this particular season of life with little kids. But you know what I can do? I can sit on the floor with a YouTube tutorial or a printout while my kids are talking to me and climbing on me. And I still get a lot of joy from it. And one of the reasons that I personally kept turning to food was because it gave me pleasure when I didn't really feel like I was getting pleasure from many other things. So now I get it from playing the guitar. I get it from being with my kids. I get it from hosting other people. Workouts, similarly. Yes, there's the physical benefits, but I think the bigger thing is the sense of competence. Like I did something good for myself, self-respect. I'm creating a higher functioning version of me before the day has had a chance to take a swing, right? And I've given you a handful of different buttons, but you don't need 7 if you currently have 1, right? You need 1 more. You need 2. Now, I want to talk about some of the barriers because I know that there's somebody who's saying, yeah, it must be nice. I don't have time. I don't have time to volunteer. I don't have time to sit on the floor and play the guitar, Elizabeth. Must be nice that you do. Or people will say, like, I can't afford it. It'd be great if I had a guitar, but I can't afford a guitar. Let's talk about I don't have time. There are legitimate season of life constraints, for sure. I was not going to the gym at 5 a.m. for the first almost 3.5 years of my twins' lives because I just wasn't getting enough sleep overnight to be able to do that. But I still could work out. You know, I can work out while my kids play in the backyard and I'm in the backyard with a kettlebell. People who say they don't have time either are not creative about how to incorporate things, or they're just not good managers of their time. Now, I have clients who, and I always give this example because they're some of the busiest people I know, some of my clients who are medical professionals. And so I have clients who are surgeons, and some days they're in clinic seeing patients, and other days they're doing surgeries, and the day that was supposed to be 6 hours turned into 18 hours. And they're also moms and all of these other things. Not all of these buttons take time. You know, the prayer button is something you can do while you're using the bathroom, while you're taking a shower, while you're brushing your teeth or cooking your lunch or putting your clothes on in the morning, you know, and that's an incredible outlet for me personally. Not all of them take time. Not all of them are going to need a block on your calendar. I think it's more true that most people are not using their time well. They're constantly leaking time, and they haven't decided that building a better dashboard matters enough to protect time for it. In the scheme of your week, there are times for these things. But if you keep telling yourself, no, I don't have enough time, you won't. This goes back to defense foundations. One of the primary categories that we use to give ourselves a pass that we have to fortify for is this dismissal. And one of the most common ways that we dismiss opportunities for change is like, well, I don't have time. I'm too busy. I think that you're too busy to not do defense, right? Because your life is going to be limited by this excuse until you do the work of uprooting it. Sometimes the empty dashboard actually makes the time problem worse because if you're bored and lonely and understimulated and disconnected, you're going to say yes to all sorts of nonsense. You're going to waste time, scroll, drift, default. And so part of the time issue is not needing more hours, it's needing more intention. Another barrier that people say is like, it sounds nice, but like, I can't afford it. I can't afford a gym membership. I can't afford music lessons. I can't afford to take a dance class. Well, then you need more creativity. Because the majority of the buttons that I can think of don't cost money. Walking with a friend doesn't cost money. Volunteering doesn't cost money. Library classes usually don't cost anything. Reading doesn't cost money, right? Starting a standing hangout at your house doesn't cost money. Doesn't have to anyway. Connection, creativity, movement, learning, service. You can check all those boxes for free. Now, here's maybe the biggest one. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what my options are. And here I want to be both compassionate because I've been there, but also blunt because I've been there. It's totally fine that you don't know how, but it's not okay to use that as a stopping point. Okay? That's where we start. It's not where we stop. It's totally fine to feel like I don't know how. I don't know what my options are. I don't know what might take some of the opportunity away from food as a a go-to solution for me, it is okay to not know how. It is not okay to use that as a stopping point. Hey, in 2026, it has never been easier to move forward when you don't know, because you've got YouTube, Google, AI, books, podcasts, libraries, people. So not knowing how is a real thing, but it's the easiest to solve, right? And if we don't, that's just intellectual laziness. And I say that with love. And I also call myself out on intellectual laziness on a regular basis. I did it just yesterday. There was something that I was like, oh, this is too complicated. Elizabeth, you're being intellectually lazy. It's not too complicated. You're just rushing and you're being impatient and you need to slow down and put a little effort into this. Some people are going to hear this and be like, cool, but none of that helps when I'm standing stressed out in the kitchen and all I want is ice cream. This idea of the dashboard, I'm going to say I don't care. Fair. This is why it has to be both and. We need to improve what we do in the moment. Yeah, but we also need to improve the patterns that make those moments happen so often. And this is, again, what we do in Defense Foundations. There's the in the moment response. How do I respond better when I'm like, screw it, I don't care, I deserve it, I'll start tomorrow. But there's also the preemptive pattern work. Why do I keep arriving at this like I don't care moment? What's contributing to that? What's bringing me there? What do I need to change upstream of this or downstream of this so that I'm not arriving at this like I'll start tomorrow deferral so often? I think about how easy this is to see in parenting. If I'm losing my crap with my kids, screaming, yelling, yeah, I want better tools in the moment so that I'm not yelling and screaming. But I also need to look at, why am I arriving at the point of losing my temper so often? Am I tired? Am I overcommitted? Am I multitasking? Am I not getting enough rest? Am I not getting help? Am I letting the noise get out of control or the mess get out of control before I intervene and letting it go on too long? If you're repeatedly hitting the food button or the alcohol button or the scroll button, whatever it is, yeah, let's improve the moment. But also, what's contributing to the stress? What's contributing to the overwhelm, to the tiredness, to the frustration? And what are we doing about it? How are we moving beyond awareness and into a change in the pattern? And let's tell the truth about what works and what doesn't. Because if I'm stressed and I eat a pint of ice cream, I am not less stressed. Yes, I was probably distracted for a few minutes. I got a little pleasure hit, a little pause, a little distraction. But the original stressor is still there. And now I've added another one because I physically feel the weight of a pint of ice cream. I'm disappointed in myself. I'm probably not going to sleep well. So I've actually multiplied the stress. That's not stress relief. That's a temporary interruption followed by a piling on of consequences. So we need better buttons and we need fewer reasons to need the old ones. We need better buttons and we need fewer reasons to need the old ones. So let's make this practical. If you feel like your dashboard is empty, okay, we don't need 67 options because then you're going to be overwhelmed. That's not the assignment. Here's where I want you to start. Where were you most commonly hitting the emergency escape button? For a lot of people, it's food, but it might not be. We're just using food as an example. Is it when you're stressed? Is it when you're tired? Is it when you're overwhelmed? Don't be like, oh, it's all of them. What are the most common ones? And then we need to get clear and specific about what contributes to those states. Let's say it's overwhelm. What's contributing to the overwhelm? Don't say everything. Be specific. Feeling behind. Feeling behind in what? Why do you feel behind? What does that look like? If you say, well, it's when I'm frustrated. What are you frustrated about? Everything. No, not everything. Tell me. You're probably not frustrated about the rate of the grass growing, so it's not everything. What are you frustrated about? What patterns, choices, habits, environment, forms of avoidance are creating those states? And then for whatever your button is, food, alcohol, whatever, what job do you think it's really doing? I would say for most people, it's reliably best at being a distraction, which is not the same thing as a solution. But what's it doing for you? Pleasure, distraction, something to do, right? An antidote to boredom, like something to do, even if it's something unhealthy, it's something to do. What is it? Now we know what we're trying to solve for with a lot more precision. Then I want you to think about one alternative to the food or the alcohol or vaping or the scrolling. One alternative. One accessible thing that fits your season of life, your budget, your interests, your energy. And let me be clear, it might not work. It might not work because it's not the right thing for you. It might not work because you need more exposure to it. But we need to start somewhere, right? Then I also want you to build one strategy for needing recovery less often. Right now, mine with my kids is cleaning up at intervals. They're not set, but like when I notice things are starting to get a little wonky, we're going to clean up. I noticed that in my son's room. He was upstairs playing this morning and he had taken all of his cars out. And then there was a couple blankets on the floor. And I was like, hey, pal, before we read, I need you to pick up all the cars. And the more that I do that, the more that I'm ensuring I'm less likely to arrive at that maxed out, overstimulated, I'm going to lose it point. Maybe for you, it's going to bed earlier. That's another big one of mine. It's so funny. I see this clearly in my kids and it helps me see it in myself. My kids are never hungrier than they are when they're tired. As we approach bedtime, everybody's hungry. Everybody wants a second dinner. Everybody wants 4 snacks and 3 drinks, right? They're not hungry. They're tired and they're trying to get more energy. And so for me, I know that if I'm really tired, sleep deprived, just not well rested, I'm making it more likely to just smash that food button as a solution, even though I'm not hungry, right? So one of my need recovery less often strategies is I go to bed earlier. And I can't do that every single night of the week. There are 1 or 2 nights a week where I have webinars and I tend to be up a lot later on those nights. But on the nights when I can go to bed shortly after putting my kids to bed, I do. And I don't do it necessarily because I'm exhausted and, oh my gosh, I can't keep my eyes open past 8. It's because I know that is a big part of me needing an emergency escape less often. If I'm well rested, I have much greater resilience to the things that typically stress me out or overwhelm me or frustrate me. I make better decisions when I am sleeping more, right? So that piece, the recovery strategy matters. And then the last thing I want to remind you is practice telling yourself the whole truth. Tell the truth about what works. Tell the truth about what doesn't. Tell the truth about what your current button is actually costing you, not just the appeal of it. Because the appeal of it, we got to stop romanticizing the button. And when we do that, it gets easier to build something better. I know that if you're an introvert listening to this, you're going to roll your eyes because I would be you, but I'm saying it as an introvert, which maybe makes me a little more trustworthy in that regard. Not that extroverts aren't trustworthy, but like if I'm going to talk about relationships being important, I'm saying it as an introvert. Makes it even more true for extroverts, but certainly something to lean into if you are lonely or feel unsupported or consider yourself an introvert. One of the easiest buttons to build is community. One of the easiest buttons to build is community, mentorship, support. Just this morning, one of my girlfriends messaged me. She's got a new baby and she just hasn't been sleeping much. And she messaged me because our relationship is one of her buttons. I'm maxed out. I'm stressed out. I'm losing it. I can't handle it. And I'm going to be there and I'm going to support her, and her day is going to be easier because instead of screaming at her other kids or eating or drinking, she tapped the community button. And a lot of us don't have that. A lot of us are trying to do this alone in our own head, isolated, surrounded by the same patterns, the same environment, the same excuses, the same defaults. And that is unnecessarily hard. I had a client message me the other day and she was like, I feel like I'm on the edge of a free fall. Like I had a bad day yesterday and everything in my head is like, screw it. Who cares? Just get it out of your system. It doesn't matter. And what did she do? She pressed the Elizabeth button, right? Like I have access to this resource in my mentor, Elizabeth, help. Community is a button. Support is a button. Mentorship is a button. Accountability is a button. Perspective is a button. And sometimes we need somebody else's because our own is just not honest or complete or helpful or healthy or all of the above. And you grow so much faster when you're around other people doing the work. You can only grow so fast on your own, right? But when you're around 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 people who are also working on better responses, better patterns, better tools, better awareness, you grow faster. Because you see more, you borrow language, you borrow momentum, you have people to tap into so you don't have to carry the heaviness and the difficulty all on your own. So if you're hearing this today and you're like, okay, that's a button that I don't have that I could have, I want to remind you, May 1st, we kick off our next Defense Foundation. So if you have not completed your scholarship application, that could be the first step that you take today. There's no obligation there. You're just telling me a little bit about you and where you're at, and maybe I'll offer you a scholarship and maybe I won't. And if I do, maybe you'll take it and maybe you don't. And if I don't, maybe you'll join anyway and pay the non-discounted price. But at least you're taking a step towards building something better in your dashboard. So if food or alcohol or vaping has been your main button, your easiest button, or your emergency button, it makes sense and it can change. But it's not going to change just because you tell yourself to stop pressing the button. It changes when you build a better dashboard and you have many other and more effective things to turn to, and you create intentionally more options for stress relief, for freedom from overwhelm, for when you're tired or frustrated. And when you start not just dealing with the moment, but the patterns that keep creating that moment. If this episode was helpful, I'd love to hear from you. You can message me, elizabeth@primalpotential.com. And the thing that I would really love for you to do most, if you haven't already, is complete the scholarship application. Even if you've done it before and you either didn't get a scholarship or you got it and you didn't take it, go ahead and do it again. I'm going to put the link in the show description. If for some reason you can't find it, email me, Elizabeth@primalpotential, and I would be happy to help. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next episode.